Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It is June 10th, 2026, and our topic here tonight is our producer spotlight with our very own Matti Boomgaarden. She is a extension educator from Southwest Minnesota, and she covers Pipestone and Murray counties, and her background is in livestock and all of agriculture. But she and Kyle Blume are going to be talking tonight about their sheep operation, and I will turn it over to them to let them tell you about themselves and what they all have going on. If you have questions at any time, please put them in the chat box, and we will do our best to get them answered at the end.
Hello, my name is Matti Boomgaarden, and with me here is my fiance, Kyle Blume. We're going to be going through what our first couple years as producers in the sheep industry have looked like, what we've learned, what we plan to change, and how we're going to continue to improve our operation. So, if I can get my screen figured out. So a little bit about our operation is we are on a third generation farm working on succession within the next 5 years, taking over from my dad. Everyone in our operation is working full-time plus off the farm. As Brenda said, I work in extension myself. My fiance works as an applicator. And then my dad, who helps quite a bit, is also working full-time as well. So everyone's busy and always working around our schedules. So Kyle and I moved back home about 3 years ago to start the process of succession from our dad. And what that started with was a Red Angus cow-calf operation. We run about 50 to 60 head calving in March through the April timeframe. And about 2 years ago, we decided that we should add some sheep to the mix. So right now we have about 40 Hampshire ewes and 25-ish short-term Rambouillet ewes. We also produce a few acres of our own feedstuffs per year, about 19, nothing crazy at all, but we've done that in corn silage, and this year we're moving to alfalfa to be able to bale our own hay for our sheep operation. So getting started, a little bit about why we started sheep. We really started it talking about it as a joke. And then a few months later, a close family friend was dispersing his flock, and we really just dove headfirst into that opportunity. We really didn't plan well for how it was going to go, and maybe began that journey with some naive optimism. We decided that pursuing sheep would be great for us because we are at capacity for what we can manage in the winter for cattle. And we knew we needed to add something else to make our cash flow work as young producers. So simply put, we needed to find room for more livestock to make everything pencil out for ourselves to take over someday. We also have really great sheep producers in our area, and thought we would have some pretty good educational opportunities and support that way. So even though it started as a joke, we're really launching ourselves full force into the sheep industry. We really enjoy raising the sheep and the challenges that have come with it. We just are about finishing up our second lambing season. We have 2 ewes left. And we're by no means experts. We have learned a lot and look forward to continuing to expand that knowledge. It's really what we probably like most about it is that we really get to dive into making our own management choices, since the sheep flock is our responsibility. That cattle side of it we manage with our dad, so it gets to be a team effort there. We really enjoy planning and making improvements for our future of the operation and knowing the changes that we're going to make and how they're going to affect the longevity and management of our flock. So what we expected when we started with that naive optimism was an easy side hustle, being able to put a lot of sheep in a small space, And since we have that cattle background, we really didn't think the cattle and the sheep business was going to be too different. We had livestock handling under our belt. We knew how to care for sick animals, all that good stuff. We also were drawn to it because we had the idea of a low cost with a fast return on investment. In all reality, we learned that adding the sheep was another full-time job. And that sheep do in fact fit anywhere, and that we really had to tighten up our fencing and our facilities to accommodate them. And then, between the cattle and the sheep industry, we've had constant and sharp learning curves with that. It's really been quite an adjustment for the two of us, but we've really enjoyed it. And then as far as money earned, we are able to invest in more sheep with the money that we have than cattle, obviously, but a lot of that money at this point in our operation is going right back to the future of that operation and improvement. So just a little bit about our current management. So we dry lot our ewes year round. We feed ground hay, fresh corn, or oat silage, all that stuff. So we limit feed alfalfa about 4 hours a day while everything is bred until they're moved into our lambing barn. And then they get about 12-hour access. They have unlimited ground hay access in the winter, and they get about 1.5 to 2 pounds of corn per head per day, making small adjustments depending on weather. We worm twice in the spring after weaning. And then as we prepare for lambing in May and June is when we lamb, just to accommodate our calving schedule. We flush ewes for 2 weeks prior to breeding, so we cut down to just regular hay, cut back on corn. I'm sorry, opposite, that's drying down. So flush ewes, we really amp up their alfalfa, we up their corn. We put rams out for about 6 to 8 weeks, starting that first week of December, and let them go through 2 full cycles. We color block our rams, and we change that every 3 weeks. So we can see who's been bred, who might have come back into heat, all those things. We shear in April, 1 month prior to our lambing. And then we give our anti-abortion shots 60 days after we've pulled the ram and 1 month prior to lambing. For shearing, we hire out our shearing. We don't do it ourselves. This year we had about 220 pounds of white wool from 23 Rambouillets and about 100 pounds of black wool from 41 Hampshires. And with that, we work with our FSA wool and mohair program to subsidize the cost of wool, because it's pretty low right now, but it's a pretty easy program to get into. So with that, we'll move our ewes over about a week prior to their first possible lambing date to the barn. And from there, we check every 2 or 3 hours once they start lambing. We intervene after about 20-30 minutes of no progress, unless obviously we see something is not going smoothly. As long as we see those that head and those 2 feet coming out, we're seeing progress, we won't intervene. We always also check after they've lambed to make sure that they're not having another one. And then we ensure that lamb is up and nursing. We really focused on that this year. And if we don't notice it, we're pretty quick to pull them and give them a colostrum supplement. So with that, some of our other, tools that we use is we have cameras installed all over our barn so we can watch it work. Both of us are pretty fortunate to have flexible jobs when needed, and we can run home and put them in a jug. We just use Ring cameras. We don't have anything fancy. We have a hotspot out in the barn, and it's worked really well for us. And then this is an example of what we put our colostrum in. We get about 3 gallons of colostrum from a local cow colostrum from a local dairy producer. And then we bag it into 6-ounce breast milk bags. Then we can unthaw it as needed. And we give 4 feedings of that before we move them on to milk replacer. We do try and pen everything up in our jugs for at least a day. And then we also strip teats, make sure there's milk in both sides. If they're really losing it about going into a jug, we will put them in a larger pen area. We have some alleys or some split larger pens to give them room to. And then after that, we go into family management. So with that family management, we'll move them over about 24 to 48 hours after they've lambed. We really watch for anyone falling behind. And to move them over to that family pen, you can kind of see we have our barn split in half. So one side is used lambing and the other side is family pens. You can see back there we have our creep pen set up as well pretty instantaneously. We have that under a hayloft to use. We really watch for illness or injury in those first couple days and throughout. We really look at our ewes' body condition score to make sure they're not falling behind, if they're not milking, things like that. And due to the time that we shear and lamb, we really also keep an eye out for fly strike. We want to avoid that if possible. So this is what it looks like outside of our barn setup. We have some hay, and in the back there's some more panels to separate, so all the ewes have access to the outdoors. But our family pen looks like that on the outside, and then they have all barn access. So, and I guess also as well around, you can't see super great, but we have continuous fence for the cattle all around there. And to modify that continuous fence, we've put up just the 3-foot hog panels. We wire them up every year and tear them down as well to make sure no one's escaping or getting out. We live right on a major highway in Minnesota, so that security is really important to us. So we'll go ahead and wean at about 2 months of age. We have one group in July and a second group in August. And then when we wean, they get unlimited creep feed, alfalfa hay. We make sure it's in front of them continuously to try and make them gain as fast as we can. And then they'll get that overeating shot at 1 month and at weaning as well. For bottle lambs, they'll get an overeating shot weekly. And then they'll get weaned at 1 month and put on creep and alfalfa full time as well. So this is what our weaned lambs end up looking like. This is last year's and what their setup looks like. So they'll stay in the barn they lambed in, and the ewes will go back to dry lotting. And then we aim to market in October. We like lambs that are about 150 pounds. Last year, we did not shear them before market, and we got docked for some dirty lambs. So this year, we plan to shear to avoid those discounts. We'll also go through and make sure that our ewes and which ewe lambs we want to keep as replacements. And then as far as our marketing, we work with a local lamb and wool program to market to a facility in Colorado. And then as far as cull ewes go, they get taken to the Pipestone Livestock Auction that's closest to us. They have sales every other week. If we have a ewe that's not been productive or not milking or had to have lambs pulled, they go as soon as they can. So in our first year, our goals were to have a 1.5 in lambs per ewe and to simply survive. We didn't hit our 1.5 lambs per ewe goal, and it doesn't look like, honestly, we're probably going to hit it this year either. And that's come with some steep learning curves. So we both work those off-farm demanding jobs going to school, working additional hours elsewhere. So we really underestimated the labor. So some other things that we did wrong is we fed open ewes all spring and all winter. We didn't know who was bred and who wasn't, and that really cost us. We fed feed on the ground. We just didn't have the appropriate feeders when we first got sheep to feed how we probably should have been, and that cost us a lot of waste. We didn't pull our ram when we should have. We were a little unprepared that way. So we had a lambing window from May, I think, until the first week of August. It was a little ridiculous. And then we just probably didn't keep records how we should have to make sure we were set up for success this year. So with that, we also had some facility challenges as far as who could go where, how we were going to set up. And that honestly just had to be fixed by experience. That we had some late nights setting things up to make them work. But ultimately, it prepared us better for this year and allowed us to figure out what equipment we were going to need. Probably one of our biggest failures is that we were not aggressive enough that first year pulling lambs that were falling behind. Being from the cattle industry, you really do everything you can to keep that calf with that cow. And the sheep industry is quite a bit different. If they're struggling, you pull them. And we kind of struggled to do that first year. So this year in our lambing abilities, we are again looking for that 1.5 lambs per ewe and to survive. So some things we did this year were put ourselves in a shorter breeding window. We started May 1st, and like I said, we have a couple left right now that are just kind of holding out, so we should be wrapping up pretty quick. We invested in ultrasounding our ewes. That helped us not feed open ewes all winter and gave us a better idea of who was going to lamb when. We're keeping better records this year. Where we have a better system as far as what we want to do and what we're tracking. We are on some better nutrient management, so that's been a game changer as well to make sure. Last year our ewes were way too fat, which didn't cause us too many problems, but it was just a waste of feed. We're also way more aggressive to intervene with lambs that are struggling. And we invested our money into 15 ewe lambs from the same producer we got our original 30 from. And then we bought 25 short-term ewes from out west in Colorado somewhere. They're Rambouillets. And that allowed us to really expand our money and get some good productive ewes. They've not all been great, but quite a few will be back for a second year. And as far as our second year lambing, we quite honestly had a rough start. So right away, our lambs seemed to be born with pretty low vigor. They had some low body temps. Even with that immediate intervention, they just failed to thrive. It was incredibly frustrating. And after our third lamb, we contacted our vet and came up with a game plan to feed our ewes the next 2 weeks, some medicated feed, and some other options to help our struggling lambs. So our conclusion was kind of that our ewes probably experienced a small fever and they were lambing a little early, and those lambs were not born with enough brown fat to get up and get going. It was super frustrating. We lost 3 lambs right away. Even after, countless efforts and doing all the things. But with the help of our vet, it seemed to turn around. And as you can see, we're at about 1.4 lambs per ewe right now, which is to be expected with the breed of sheep we have. We have some Hampshires that are not known to be as prolific, but they are having larger single lambs. We have 2 ewes that died this year that were bred. That was unfortunate. Several have bad bags. We've had a few that haven't had enough milk to support their 2 lambs. So we do currently have 10 bottle lambs. And those ewes again will most likely be culled and replaced. Adding those Western Rambouillet ewes was pretty nerve-wracking. They're pretty well known to be less friendly. They're range sheep, and they're going to a dry lot situation. But since we, hand fed them every day, spent a lot of time around them, by the time they lambed, they were pretty good. I think we got them in October or November. But they did have a pretty low body condition score. We pushed them on feed pretty hard for a while. As far as processing, we will process lambs in the first 48 hours, 24 to 48. Put them in jugs. Or after we process, we pull them out of the jugs. We'll spray nabbles with iodine as soon as we possibly can. And before we process, we'll wait for them to get a good start, make sure that everyone's healthy. If anyone looks like they're struggling, we will leave them for a while. We also try and process in the morning or the evening. Just with the time of year that we lamb, we try to avoid that heat stress for everyone. So with our processing, we will dock tails, castrate, and all the lambs get 1 cc of penicillin. And then we tag them in order that they're born. We put a tag in the left ear for ewe lambs and the right ear for wethers. And then as you can see there, we paint the ewe and the lamb the same family number. So when they go out, we can kind of see who belongs to who. It's been pretty helpful. And that there is just what our processing bucket looks like. We have our record sheet there, our bottle of penicillin, our castrator, the bands, and then we keep our paint and our paint numbers nearby as well. So our records are right now on Google Sheets, and this is kind of what they're looking like. So our best advice would be to have a plan, but to expect to adapt to what you need to keep track of, and to keep better records than you think you need. It's going to be, we found because we didn't keep great records last year, we were kind of in the dark on a lot of the ewes that we did keep and what to expect. So this year we kind of amped it up. We will go through and note the qualities we're looking for in replacements and note who has those, which ewe has them. We did recently receive a grant that requires us to keep more data, and I'm looking forward to that because I think it will be helpful. And then with this, we will also collect our weaning weight and market weight just for our own knowledge and to know how everyone is growing. And yeah, as you can see, our records indicate who they should have been bred to, if they had a single, if someone died, how they died. And then we have our counts of what everyone looks like as far as ewe lambs, wether lambs, and our percentages calculated. So in animal health aspect, we have really learned that prevention over treatment is essential. We always have a bottle of penicillin, a good antibiotic on hand to treat anyone who needs it. I think a common misconception of sheep is that they die pretty easily and quickly without warning. But what we found is that, sheep hide their illnesses really well. So when you see they're ill, you have to treat them. You can't wait to see if they're going to get better. They need immediate intervention. If you're noticing they've been sick for a while. We have used spectamycin on hand for lambs that might have an upset tummy or some scour issues. That's worked well for us. And like I said, to have that source of colostrum on hand and prepped is essential. So these are 2 things we keep on hand for our baby lambs. That spectamycin and that baby lamb strength is just good for lambs that might need a little energy to get up and get going. And when I talk about prevention versus treatment, this little lamb in the corner is a lamb that was born and we noticed was not doing well. When they're hunched up like that, their bellies aren't full, we intervene almost immediately and pull them. We don't wait to see for that improvement. We body temp them and watch that body temp pretty closely as well. My other best advice for your animal health would be to build that relationship with your vet really early on and get it established. We're really lucky in this area to have vets with great small ruminant experience and sheep experience that we can call on them pretty often when we have questions. Like I said, this year when we had those issues with our low viability lambs, we worked really closely with our vet to come up with a plan to treat those ewes and those lambs and get everyone back on track. And then, as far as animal health, have good mentors to call on. We're, again, incredibly fortunate to have people we can call almost any time of day with questions and get good advice on how to proceed. As new producers, we are a little apprehensive to do what we think we should. We need some reassurance sometimes. And having a good mentor makes all the difference. And then some advice one of my good mentors gave me is to have somewhere to take your dead ones. After a rough start to lambing this year, it was pretty discouraging, and that was said to us, and it just means don't set yourself up to look at them and, sulk in your shortcomings. Lambs are gonna die, and it can be pretty discouraging, but you just got to keep moving and keep looking forward to doing better. Every lamb we've lost has motivated us to learn and be better as producers, because that's, quite frankly, all we can do. Our facility setup looks, as far as our advice, I would say simple and functional beats fancy any day. So investing in equipment that saves labor first and upgrading later is really important. We found a lot of great sheep equipment on Facebook Marketplace or people getting out of the industry that haven't been expensive but have greatly improved our facility and our operational function. The first year I said we didn't know how to make that barn work. We spent all that time adjusting, and it set us up for a better second year and knowing kind of what equipment we needed to look for in the off season and how we were going to implement that equipment instead of just buying equipment to have equipment. So for those things that helped our labor and animal health, we got bottle feeding pens this year. That was a game changer for us, because having to fill 8 pop bottles every day, several times a day with milk replacer got to be a lot, along with those bucket feeders. We got hay and corn feeders and jugs, so we are able to feed off the ground this year. We got portable corn and hay bunks for in the barn. We invested in some additional creep feeders, so all our lambs have good access to creep. And then we got some automatic waters as well that go in with our sheep, so we aren't having to worry about if they have access to fresh water. So some of the best investments that we have made is probably those short-term ewes. They will make what we spent on them back this year and for years to come. The ultrasounding was $10 a head, but it really helped us, again, not to feed everyone through the winter who didn't need to be fed, and gave us a good idea of what we were working with. Those bucket feeders and pens for bottle lambs. This is a picture of our setup. Pretty simple, just some plywood. And then on the bottom is some plastic flooring. We put wood chips underneath, and it saves us a ton of time. We just always make sure those buckets are full. We also bought an easy milker, which was an investment we kind of went back and forth on. Which an easy milker is just a hand express milker that we've used on ewes that have had, big teats or haven't accepted their lamb. We've been able to get some good colostrum from that, and it's really helped. Um, I don't know.
I mean, it's helped where we're not having to burn through that cow colostrum that we've collected and froze and want that for, say, the lamb that's out of a ewe that doesn't have any milk at all. And then, this is a lot better option if you can get the fresh sheep colostrum or cow colostrum. Cow colostrum works, but this is a whole lot better, and just get some value back from this ewe if we're having issues with her too in some way other than just getting rid of her as a cull. And it a lot better than sitting there and trying to fight with you kicking at you while you're trying to milk into a pop bottle.
Yeah, a big time saver. Also genetics. At this point, we're in such a high rate of replacement that we have not invested in rams yet, but we do lease rams. And that has been a good choice for us. It's maybe a little more expensive in the long run, but because we are keeping so many of our own ewe lambs back, it's tricky to keep a ram around just for a small group. Another thing we've invested in is panels and working facilities. We joke one of the biggest improvements is having gates to get in and out of places this year. Last year we just had straight panels. Also, some good chute working facilities to be able to work our ewes in has been a huge improvement. So another thing I would really encourage you to look into is available grants and other subsidies. We're in Minnesota, obviously, and we have won grants for our sheep operation through the MDA and the American Lamb Board. And it'll really allow us as new and young producers to expand our herd and have the quality we desire. Also, feeding equipment. Like I said, those hay feeders, the feeders in the bunks have been a huge help for us. We've also, just to show that feeding equipment doesn't need to be a huge investment. We just take some barrels and cut them in half and frame them up, and we often use those to feed corn in. And that has been a huge saver. So even taking some time to make some things, which is pretty simple, a lot of plans you can find are great help. This is another thing that we have had made through a local egg class. A welding egg class is some bale feeders that go in as you eat some. It gives us a little less waste, and they're also pretty portable and easy to take down. I'd also really encourage, again, that relationship to keep on hand and invest in getting to know who around you can help you out when you need it. And then I would also encourage you to invest in some education. We're a part of a local lamb and wool program that has been really invaluable for what we've put into it as new producers. So just a little bit on what our barn setup looks like. So we go from calving to lambing, and I think it takes about a week. So we will clean everything out. We put either wood chips or some gravel down. Put our pens up so you can see our creep pen set up there. And if you take a look at a lot of our pictures, we kind of have some janky setups. We have random panels and holes that we need that we have tied up. It's really nothing fancy, but it works for us and allows us to have a better operation. Last year, where those creep pens panels were, we just had gates set up that they could get through and under. So this year we modified that and improvement. And then this is what it looks like when we bring over ewes. We have those, again, those portable hay feeders. We have our water in the corner, and we bring about half over, and then we leave the other half in the dry lot. And then when we go to family setup, you can see we have it split in half, and kind of that same setup going on. And this is our jug pen setup. So ours are welded by that same ag metals class or welding class at our local high school. It was a good way to get stuff made by just buying the materials. They're not perfect, but they really work for us well. They are metal and incredibly heavy. They're not fun to put up, but we transformed 2 of our calving pens into 8 jug pens. And so we have 4 pens on each side. In there, we have a water bucket. We have their hay feeder. We fill those daily. Eventually, we would love to have a watering system in our jugs, but since this is a kind of temporary setup, we don't want to invest. So for right now, the labor to fill those water buckets is just fine. And I think those hay feeders that you see hanging up, we bought from an auction for like $1. So again, improvements don't have to be costly.
It's all about just watching for the deals. Yeah, that was, other than a little bit of driving, those were a well-worthy investment.
So yeah, our lessons learned is that sheep are pretty low labor until they aren't. So this season of lambing is obviously a pretty intense labor situation for us. And they require a tremendous amount of attention in a very short period. And then that time commitment is much greater than we ever anticipated. Balancing the sheep, the off-farm jobs, life in general was challenging. And we were experiencing a lot of change in a very short amount of time. But the curves it throws at us, we get better every time. And then burnout is real. Plan to have some help. We're still working on that ourselves. We do have some family that helps, but looking into family and friends that can do chores for you when you need to take a weekend away or help out while you're working is incredibly valuable. Like I said, we're lucky to have jobs that are relatively flexible when needed, but we can't always be around. So one of our biggest surprises, we did a program analysis that showed, our income and loss, and we found we were losing a ton of money on feed waste, either by feeding too much or not feeding in an appropriate manner. So, feeding on the ground or feeding in a way that they were going to waste it. So improving our feed management will have a significant impact on our profitability. We're working really hard at it this year. So in year 1, we didn't make the green in our program analysis, which is to be expected. We're investing a lot and figuring a lot of things out. Once we broke it down, we lost money per ewe, and I don't remember how much. But it is really motivating to improve that feed waste and figure out a better system. So, the other thing that we learned is sheep can't carry much debt. And we did know that going in. But, they don't generate enough cash flow to support a large amount of debt. So understanding your expenses and keeping them under control is critical. Doing that program analysis, knowing what you're spending per ewe per day is super helpful. And then, every lamb counts. So lamb losses are costly. And as a livestock producer, you always know that. But like I said, we were often hesitant to intervene with struggling lambs, and it did end up costing us. So going into year 2 and year 3, we've been much more cognizant of that. So if you yourself are a new producer, I would really recommend, seeking out good mentorship from your program, whether it's a neighbor, or even, extension has great options, or, joining an educational program. Having that mentorship is, I feel, a big key to holding a successful, sustainable program. Knowing that costs of production, intervening early, making decisions that are going to support those long-term goals, and deciding what your long-term goals are. That's something we've done, is sat down and decided where we want this to go, and given us long-term vision for our operation. Developing that vet relationship, and again, looking into and taking advantage of grant opportunities or subsidies. So as far as what's next on our agenda for year 3 and beyond, one of the grants we received is going to help us build a hoop barn on our property that we will be able to house our sheep in. It will allow us to get more sheep. It will allow us to, separate by body condition more and by lambing groups better. With that, since we'll have a proper facility, we won't have to share the space with the cattle. We will be lambing in April next year. We hope to be lambing in April next year, to avoid some, busy seasons that are in May and June. We'll be expanding our ewe genetics. We are going to look into getting some more prolific breeds like polypays, and crossbreeding them with hams. But just to get those lambs per ewe number up, we really need to look into expanding those opportunities for ourselves. Changes we're going to plan to test is baling our own alfalfa. We've not produced our own bales before. We've bought, and we'll see how it goes. It's again another time constraint for us, but it will prove to be help with costs if we are able to be successful at that. We'll also be using our own ram genetics this year. We had a ewe that was bred when we got her, and even after giving her some Ludolace a couple times, she still lambed in February, and we decided to keep her ram lambs, and we will use them on our short-term ewes, and any other new ewes that we get, just to keep those genetics separate from our Hampshire ewes. We also plan to do some seeders and synchronizing, so we can seeder smaller groups at one time and have them bred in groups of like 10 or 20. So we have a better idea and kind of better control over our lambing. As far as the long-term vision, we really hope to be over 150 ewes in the next couple of years. Again, continue to improve those genetics. It's always on our mind to do those things. We hope to adopt an accelerated lambing breeding program. So that is, if you're unfamiliar, that is lambing 3 times in 2 years. And it takes a lot of nutrient management, ewe management. It's a little more intense as far as to get them to be able to do that and do it successfully. And then we want to be able to contract within our program, and we need the lamb numbers to do that. So you have to be able to guarantee a certain number of lambs. We're not there yet, but that is in our long-term vision. And then we obviously dry lot everything right now, but we do hope to establish rotational grazing in our home pasture at some point. It's just a matter of time and availability to do all that requires. We would love to be able to utilize that grazing land, even if it's just for a few months a year, to get our sheep out on the grass. It comes down to we need to re-fence everything. Again, we're right by that major highway, so we don't want to risk anything getting out. It would not be a good deal in our neck of the woods. And then just some helpful resources that I found from some different places. If you're needing them, you're welcome to use them, but they've been great to have printed out and on hand as we've been in our couple years. I think that's all I've got.
Thank you, Maddie and Kyle. And we do have a bunch of questions. So you don't see them all, but we do certainly have quite a few questions that we're going to aim to kind of pull through and kind of get some interactive kind of discussion and some thoughts. Okay. And actually, I'm going to take either the point on this one. All right. And so this one is you, Maddie, and you, Kyle. Tell me about the workforce. All right, who's in charge of what? How does stuff happen? Okay, see, Kyle, now you get to talk.
Oh boy. So I would say a lot of the labor, the day-to-day stuff I kind of cover. I'm out checking on stuff, filling milk buckets. What else? I mean, checking waters, making sure creep feed's topped off for lambs. Just all your daily stuff. I try to take care of a majority of what's going on in the barn there. And then hopefully I'm around whenever there's an issue with a lamb. And then it kind of comes down to Maddie and her dad Brian covering for me whenever I'm inevitably gone as an applicator this time, like kind of right when halfway through lambing, and then up until like right now, we get pretty busy in the fields spraying and doing a little bit of spreading. So there's times where I get a phone call and, hey, this one's lambing. We're having some issues. I was like, okay, I'm about 30 miles away right now in a sprayer that goes 30 miles an hour. So, and then it's just a lot of then kind of filling the gaps there. I would say, and then, yeah, just a lot of then people kind of getting coverage for that. I've said before, like if as long as someone can cover things during the day when I can't get there, once the sun goes down at night, I can kind of take care of the rest of that. I'm pretty good about staying up and working on stuff if things need taken care of. I pulled my unfortunate share of all-nighters, just getting everyone squared away, making sure lambs get fed. For having used lamb, I've had, yeah, finally we're done. I'm going to go inside, and then I check the cameras, and about 2 a.m., yep, she's going to need some help here. That's about 3 by the time I'm in the house. And then I just say, yeah, just as long as people can help make sure everything's covered in the day, I kind of take care of things at night. I don't know, what would you say you kind of cover? I think that Maddie, it's very good at making sure that records are kept up. I get stuff on the paper, and then she's a lot better of hopping on the computer and getting it logged into there. She also has a lot clearer mind on some of the management decisions, and this is something I would say. I guess where would
Great.
Hey, you're doing great, and you're a good listener too, Kyle. See, so I'm a married man, and you hope to be. All right, and so we're getting just a little bit better at that, one step at a time. Okay, so we're gonna pass it, and I think my job is to make sure again that we kind of get a nice flow in terms of these, and that this logically fits because we talked on the records, Maddie, that he tasked you with there, and so what weights do you collect? How do you weigh those? Even if they're babies, or were you doing something kind of at weaning? And then my secondary question for that is then decisions on replacement animals that are primarily used that you keep.
So we collect weaning weight and market weights. We have a portable scale that we again invested in that has been a good investment for us. We would like to someday at some point collect birth weights, but it's just not plausible for us right now. So yeah, we collect those two and track them to see growth. And then as far as replacements, we try and mark who's a good mom. We will only keep a ewe lamb if it has come from a twin. We don't keep anything from a single. just because, again, we're really working on building a herd or a flock that's more prolific in lambs. And, we have had decent amount of twins. We had one triplet. Otherwise, we do have a lot of singles, so we would like to get out of that.
Well, fair enough. And even when we think about it from genetic selection, you can kind of move that up, and it'll be incrementally fun to kind of watch that progress. And you're certainly at 1.4. Lambs is certainly a plenty good spot there from a start standpoint. And you discussed even from a genetics and thoughts of kind of moving forward that you can get to where you want to be as well. Okay, so you talked about. I'm going to talk on two different management functions that are you based. I like that you did do the ultrasounding of the ewes, right? And so I appreciate that you took that responsibility. And so again, I'm gathering the kind of the little bit of the ewe management there of how it happened, kind of pre and then right at the beginning is again just your thought process when you had the ultrasound used. Can you just reiterate a little bit? Did you, the ones that were either open, you said you either kept them too long or I mean, again, when you change it into an accelerated breeding program, then we get to expose them. And then just kind of your thoughts on that.
So the first year we did not ultrasound. For our first year, we received the ewes in November. That, I think the week before we should have been breeding. So we threw the ram in. We bought a ram, threw the ram in, left him in there because we were pretty inexperienced. We kind of thought we would be getting these ewes already bred in the March time frame. So for the first year, having to breed them was a little unexpected. But so this year we ultrasounded, and anyone who was open, we culled. We didn't give them a second chance. And really, I think we ended up with 5 or something.
We had 4 ewe lambs, and then two of our older ewes. One was a hamp, and one was one of the Rambouillets. And we just had a good enough turnout of overall. If we would have had more open, we would have maybe considered keeping those ewe lambs around because they're considerably younger for what some people would want to breed them at. But with what we had for breed up, it was just made sense to send them down the road, get our ultrasound cost covered, and then as for if we switch the accelerated lambing, that is kind of once we get to that point and see kind of where we are numbers wise, it's going to be more of a whole other decision there.
Absolutely. My next inquiry kind of comes of you digging out of a hole. How's that? All right. And so you discussed, and I think that this happens not just to you, and I appreciate you sharing. It seems like the most challenging time or the most ones where there's potentially the biggest problems is initially in the lambing season, and you said that was potentially a thriftiness issue. And one of the things that I've kind of at least identified as well is that making sure that we give enough time in terms of some high quality feeds prior to lambing. And I'm not saying that you didn't, don't get me wrong, but you can manage those because then those other ones have been on maybe even some of the higher quality alfalfa there at the last trimester, and even if they weren't bred right away. But you did the right thing in terms of working with your veterinarian and probably using a medicated feed additive that could kind of help you out. And so just kind of discuss how you dug out of that hole.
Well, I would say at first it came with getting to the point where we just had to get something figured out. After the first one, I was like, okay, this is weird. Second time, okay. And then once you get the third one where you're having issues and once you start realizing you're getting really good at getting a little too good at intervening and giving them the dextro shot and we're too good at tubing lambs, that's when you go, okay, we really need to figure something out. And it helped. I had called the vet right away and talked to him, and then one of our mentors that we work with was also nice enough, has a really good relationship with the same vet, and he even helped communicate what was going on. And it was just those deals where you you get into a low enough of a spot where it's like, all right, we got to do something. If it costs me a little extra, if we save 1 or 2 lambs, that paid for that feed pretty dang quick.
Yeah, I would agree
Just
on that. And just, the other thing, and even if those were less thrifty than preferred, some of the times, even when we think about it from a beginner standpoint, but also any seasoned person, is that abortive diseases can catch us, and there's just no glory in being the sheep producer during that time. And so, if there's anything that we can do from a prevention standpoint, and I kind of think of it similarly, is that if one happens, then you're disappointed. But if there's a second or a third, then we need to collect those. And in fact, even our diagnostic labs that we have and those that are close to veterinary schools or have access to them is to keep as much as you can if the lamb, and preferably keep that placenta intact. And as much information as that you can provide them, they'll provide it back, and then we can kind of attack and approach that more appropriately. Okay, we're going to move to some lamb management. All right, and I'm gonna grab this one initially as well. And so a colleague there that you saw in there said that a ewe had one, and then she had two, and then sometimes there is a delay from a third standpoint. And if she's down, or if that's the case, you can obviously put your glove on an arm and see if there is another one in there. But also you have cameras that help you out as well, right? And so that is certainly something that can be used. But I think that it takes a little bit of patience on those, and sometimes those, for those that are joining us, sometimes if they have the first two, is that and you don't know that, or there's not feet coming near, is that they might not be presented and ready yet. Okay, and so it's okay to just be a little bit patient and identify if that's the case, because if you don't have feet coming up then, and a nose and a head, then there's also a chance that even if there's three of them, that they're not giant, that you can help and have that on their own. And so if you can just kind of take a step back most of the time, that's an okay one. But you said you kind of pull lambs again as they're struggling. You had some Hampshires that probably had some 15-pound lambs or something too, right? And so just what's your quick thoughts there? You kind of discussed lambing management.
So you make a lot of really good points there, Travis. Yeah, it's one of those deals where, yeah, if I can step back and give them a moment at least, um, get the first one down and going. Usually, I feel like I'm starting to get a pretty good judgment. You can kind of look at one and go, okay, that's a hefty enough lamb. I'd be amazed, and unless she's wider than the barn door is for some reason. Usually, you're like, okay, should be hopefully done, but just yeah, a lot of keep an eye on them. Like I try to stick around the place. Hopefully, I'm not having to run back and do whatever. Just with the 20 other things that seem to be in the 20 other irons in the fire. Um, if you see her once you start seeing her cleaning off that lamb really well, and that's all she's really caring about, that's when it's like, okay, I think we're in the clear. But once you see her, she'll kind of clean off, and she'll go wander off and want to lay down. That's when you're like, all right, we're still in the woods here. That's kind of what I'm starting to pick up on. And then, yeah, when it comes down to how quickly we're pulling lambs off there, I'm trying to be pretty on top of once I can get those ewes caught in a jug or something without creating too much stress trying to strip teats out. And gets that plug out, and that also gives me a chance to see, okay, how much milk does she actually have? And if I'm sitting there and feeling one, it's like, all right, there's nothing there. And like one of the Western ewes we have is a really good example. I checked both sides and just nothing. Big old bag on her, but there was just nothing in the teat or anything. I just said, all right, just let's get these lambs pulled right away. They weren't even dried off yet. Let's just get colostrum warmed up and get some towels, get them cleaned off, get them going. That's that no hesitation kind of deal. And then, yeah, that 24 hours that we talked about, at least I would keep them in there. I'm just constantly trying to look over, hey, is this lamb getting up? Is mom kicking at them? Especially with these ewe lambs as first timers. Really interesting for us doing both these Western ewes and these ewe lambs at the same time. They're both new to us. The Western ewes have their flightiness, and then the ewe lambs, I'm used to calving out heifers, and that these ewe lambs are a whole nother zoo on their own. And that's the whole sitting there watching them sit there and just hoping that making sure that they're letting their lambs get a drink and not just spin in circles or not sitting there and stomping at them. That's been a challenge, but also then how when I should intervene there, help a lamb out. It's been a learning curve for sure.
That's very good, Kyle. And for entertainment value with your colleagues or teammates or people that you went to school with that say, hey, I'm calving out 80 heifers. Like, oh yeah, good, try 80 ewes or whatever, right? And see,
Yep.
so there you go. But appreciate your efforts on that. From the lambs that we do have that make the bottle pen, Maddie and Kyle. Okay, I mean. Some of them are going to get pulled, and you obviously said a Rambouillet you wasn't probably going to have enough milk either. And so it sounded like you had the kind of a bulk milk option for them, or what's your management there, and just kind of reiterate if you kindly would of how it's been working for
Go
you.
back, I think, and show it.
Well, Manny goes back. So we have, luckily, we're in an area with a lot of dairies, which is interesting for me from where I grew up. We have dairies that, I mean, when we went and picked up, they about gave it to us like $20 for a 3-gallon bucket of colostrum, which they had it frozen. We had to thaw it out, rebag it, had to be fairly careful with that, and then rebag it and refreeze it, and then as we need it, we'll pull those bags out, thaw them out, and then on top of that, with the one program that we are a part of, we were able to work out. They have a deal every year where all the producers around this area and the other areas have a deal where you can buy. We're buying what we got 5 or 6 45 or 50 pound bags of milk replacer that when they're starting out, we start them on the bottle till they get going, and then luckily all these lambs caught on pretty well to the buckets, and I'm mixing a gallon. There's only a couple in there and they're younger. I mix a gallon at a time and just kind of keep watching it. Once they get about the size that some of these are in the pen and we get 4 in there, so I'm mixing 2 gallons and keeping it filled up. I would love to someday, when we get to the point where we got the 150 head, would love to get one of the milking machines where it kind of doses it out as it needs it. Because one of the biggest problems with these buckets is keeping them clean, keeping the milk from getting kind of off. So at least every couple days I'm out tossing those without having to wash them out and start fresh. And that's the only big pain, but that's still a lot easier than filling 8 or what we would have been doing 10 of our pop bottles a day. Probably would be 2 or 3 feedings a day, which when we did 6 or 7 last year, and that was a feed on itself.
I also think the bucket feeding, because they have the access and they're not gorging themselves 2 or 3 times a day, they just look like healthier lambs. They're not pot-bellied. They take to the creep feed and stuff better because they're not just starved when you're feeding them those few times. We have had to make, like Kyle said, make sure there's no spoilage, make sure they're covered. At night, you can kind of see in one of the pictures for the younger lambs, we do illuminate the bucket so they're more attracted to go drink from it when they're getting going. Otherwise, it's cold milk, keeps better. So we'll start them on the bottle after colostrum with warmer milk, and then we'll kind of gradually get it colder so they're used to that. We do have one bottle lamb that is not taking to the bucket, so we do supplement feed it once or twice a day with a bottle.
Man, that sounded like a great answer. Okay, I'm gonna have to pull away the beginning sheep producer from your title. Okay, now you're just a sheep producer. Take that, Maddie. So I think that was good in how you described it. The other thing, even when you have that bottle pen, is then offering, hay or even quick pellets and stuff, and so that allows them to kind of make that decision. And when it's there and when you offer it, it makes it that much easier as you transition them, and hopefully can get them out of there if that's the home base. Within within the 30 days that kind of you were describing, because their body and their digestive system is in an adequate spot that some of the times they will be better off if we just kind of get them weaned off that bottle as best we can. But the points that you made and the accessibility is absolutely correct. Okay, and so we got them weaned off, even the ones off the U's too. Okay, so great, thanks. See, we're rocking through the calendar. So I know that you get to work with. Of course, our regional lamb and wool program that we have available in your area there. But what do you describe and the lamb ration? Okay, and so we gotta get at least them to a marketing weight. How have you made those decisions? What's your kind of product availability? I guess you had some corn silage or some oat silage, and so also some corn. So just a quick one on lamb ration and generalities.
So I can't get super technical with this. We have, along with our vet relationship, we have a really good relationship with our feed store in Pipestone. They're also a sheep producer and very knowledgeable. The first year we did it, we pretty much said, "Hey, here's where we're at. Can you help us figure this out?" And they said, "Yep, we'll send a truck right away." So right now, like with the lambs that are in like these bottle pens and the ones that are out in the family pens that have their little creep pen, we are starting with just a 20% protein pellet, if I remember right. Working on that. I can't tell you exactly the whole makeup of it. I guess if I would have planned ahead, I could have went and grabbed the label off the bag. But and then just gradually as we go along, we'll keep kind of upping that protein level as we need it. And we work with that feed store in town, and they do a handful of additives along with they'll do a pellet along with a good corn mix, and that is we'll have creep feeders out once we wean. We'll have them in the pens and we'll just kind of free choice. Biggest deal we learned last year is really watching with the pellets. I don't know if it's just had that humid of year, but we had a lot of issue with our pellets are swelling up a lot. So that's one big thing, is to constantly be checking the bottoms of these creep feeders, scooping them out, making sure things flowing all right. Have that creep feeder I still need to do a little work on before we wean to make sure my gates are open, we get a good flow. Do that, and then like we said, we try to give them full access to alfalfa as we can, just to keep them going. Right now in their creep pen, we have a bunk, and then I took an IBC tote, just your chemical tote, took the lining out of it into a cage and bent in the sides to make kind of a V, and I can put a square bale alfalfa in there, and the lambs, they're at 24 hours a day, they're in there just trying to, it's a lot easier for them to go and get something off of that than to try to fight with mom over at the big bale feeders. But yeah, the biggest deal for those rations is, I wish I knew more. I was a little more educated on that myself, but good relationship with your feed guy, or finding that person that can really point you in the direction when it comes to sheep.
I agree 100%, Kyle, and I'll save you on that one. Okay, you answered it plenty good, and then there with the last part of your sentence there is know the right teammates, right? And so even when you guys both talked about it as kind of as you built your program, is identifying who can be helpful, and if you have no doubt, of course, our veterinarian and then a feed representative that, and again, that works there in Pipestone that can kind of help you. Is that, don't worry, Kyle, you don't have to know it all right away. Okay, you're doing great work, and in fact, they're knowing. I mean, that's their job as well. Okay, is to help and consult with you, and so there are plenty of people that are nutrition focused that are also interested in and willing and provide their own personal gratification from helping you to be successful. So building that team of allies is certainly an important part. The last question that we're going to do to kind of summarize this up, because my teammates here that also joined us, Colleen Carlson and Brenda Miller, also joined us from the University of Minnesota Extension, and been putting some questions in there as well, and helping to facilitate this. And of course, Maddie's going to be a leader also as a part of our Minnesota Extension. But the last one is that you touched on it, okay, and I'm going to allow you to expand on it or help you kind of a little bit, is that you received a grant or received one from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, but not everybody's from Minnesota, and the American Land Board one is big, and 150, 160 different producers were chosen from across America. And so, just tell a little bit. I'm excited about it. It's again a large nationwide grant that the American Land Board is helping to facilitate, and I believe I'll get to help as well with our producers. And so, what's your thoughts? What kind of draw you to it? And I mean, I know that it's going to be collecting more information, but also allowing people to be progressive and know that information. Maddie, tag, you're it.
So really, when we look at that American Land Board, it's going to allow us to, a big part of that team, we're going to have that technical assistance. We're going to be given the tools to do better data collection, to improve our program and management. We're really looking to build a sustainable operations for ourselves. I mean, we hope someday it is not, we're able to mentor other people, I guess, someday, not this day, but someday. But having those grants is going to allow us to expand a lot quicker and more efficiently. And that data collection is going to allow us, I think, to make smarter choices in feed and genetics, allow us to get where we want to go a lot faster.
Awesome. Thank you for being so genuine. I'm going to give a virtual, hand clap for you. And so being genuine and answering kind of some of the questions, and giving, the mini tour and philosophies of your operation and kind of how that works. And we appreciate the attendees that we had. But Kyle and Maddie, you're experts, all right? And so, well, you don't feel like it yet because it's just one step at a time. But I think when you look at it from a what's next, those that have joined us for either the webinar this evening or if you watch this at a later point in time, is that knowing that you have goals, identifying what those are, and how you can get there is how we can get better. And I think that's an interesting part of why you discussed that you can be part of a nationwide event to evaluate kind of our progressive producers and truthfully evaluate what's going right and what's going wrong within your operations. And so just an exciting time. And thank you so much for sharing, both of you, of your operation and kind of what's worked, what hasn't worked. And appreciate the rest of our teammates. And of course, again, Kyle, you said you get to do a bunch of the chores, but we appreciate you providing some time for Maddie to be part of our Minnesota Extension and our sheep and goat team as well. And so that's part of her career, and we look forward to her future involvement and sharing that as well. And so on behalf of North Dakota State University, where we are extending knowledge and changing lives, and the University of Minnesota Extension, where we are driven to discover. A big thanks to Maddie and Kyle for sharing your operations, and hope everyone has a great evening, and wish you all the best as we switch through and work wherever you're at in the calendar of your sheep and lamb operations. But right now, the prices are good, and keep all those lambs live, healthy, and thriving, and hopefully we can see returns on it in the near future. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.